Number 25. The banjo coal shovel. We start with the humblest weapon of all, the wide, round-nosed scoop the miners called the banjo. A hand loader filled coal cars with this shovel 10, 12 hours a day, and here's the cruel part. He was paid by the ton, not by the hour, and the ton was rigged. The standard ton is 2,000 pounds, but coal operators routinely made a miner's ton 2,200, even 2,500 pounds, so a man shoveled extra coal for free. That shovel built fortunes for other men. In the right hands, in a bad moment, it could also crack a skull. Every grievance in the coal fields started with this tool. Number 24. The handpick, the mandrel. Before machines, coal was cut by one man swinging a pick on his side, in a seam sometimes less than 30 inches high. Mechanical cutting machines didn't spread through Appalachian mines until after 1900. So, for decades, nearly every lump of coal in America was won by hand, in the dark, with this. A pick that can split solid rock does not care what it hits. To the miner, it was a tool. To anyone who crossed him in the wrong tunnel, it was something else. Number 23. The breast auger. To shoot coal loose, a miner first had to drill the hole for his powder by hand, leaning his whole chest into a brace and turning a long steel auger bit. No power, no motor, just a man's back. Some of these augers ran 4 feet long with a razor screw point. It was the single most exhausting job in the mine, and the bit on the end of it was a 4-foot steel spike. Nobody wanted to be on the wrong end of one. Number 22. The sledgehammer and hand steel, the double jack. Hand drilling rock took 2 men, one to hold and turn the steel, one to swing an 8-pound sledge in the dark, trusting the other man not to miss. They called it double jacking, and it came into the Western and Appalachian mines after 1860. It took total nerve. One bad swing and your partner lost a hand. A man who could swing 8 pounds of steel all day, accurately in the dark, was not a man you wanted to fight. Number 21. The timbering hatchet. The deadliest thing in a coal mine was never the explosion. It was the roof. Rock falls quietly killed more miners than every blast and fire combined, which is exactly why Congress created the United States Bureau of Mines in 1910. A miner set his own timber props, and the short hatchet he used to notch and trim them rode on his belt every shift. It was a carpenter's tool that kept the mountain off your head, and a fighting hatchet if it came to that. Number 20. The copper needle and tamping bar. Here's a forgotten little detail that tells you everything about how dangerous this work was. When a miner packed his powder into a drilled hole, he used a copper needle and a hickory ramming rod. Never iron, never steel. Why? Because one spark off a steel tool in a gassy mine would kill everyone in the section. That copper needle, used wrong, was the difference between a paycheck and a funeral. It was a weapon against the mountain itself. Number 19. Black powder. Before dynamite, every miner was his own demolitions man. He charged the hole with black powder, saltpeter, charcoal, and sulfur, the same mix that had been blowing things up since the 1300s. He lit it and he ran. Windy shots and misfires killed men constantly. A miner who handled powder every day knew exactly how much it took to bring down a wall of coal or anything else. The companies hated that knowledge, in a working man's hands. Number 18. The safety fuse. The one invention that let a miner light a charge and walk away alive came from an Englishman named William Bickford in 1831. A cord of powder wrapped in waterproof jute that burned at a slow, predictable rate of about 30 seconds per foot. Before Bickford, men lit charges with loose powder trails and quills, and the misfires butchered them. That cord is humble, but it gave the working man control over an explosion, and control is power. Number 17. The blasting cap and dynamite. In 1863, Alfred Nobel invented the blasting cap, a tiny charge of mercury fulminate that made a far more violent explosive practical. By 1867, that explosive had a name: dynamite. 1 pound of it did the work of about 2 2/3 pounds of old black powder. The catch? Early dynamite turned dangerously unstable in the cold. It could sweat and go off if it dropped below roughly 40 degrees. Every Appalachian miner kept sticks of it, and every Appalachian miner knew it could level a building. Remember that. It comes back later in this list. Number 16. The Davy safety lamp. Sir Humphrey Davy gave the miner a flame that would not blow up the mine, the wire gauze safety lamp of 1815. But here is the genius of it. That same lamp was a gas detector. A miner read the height and color of the flame to know how much deadly fire damp, methane, was building up around him. A lamp that warns you the air is about to kill you in its own quiet way, one of the most important weapons a miner ever held. It was a weapon against the invisible. Number 15. The oil wick cap lamp. Going back even further, around 1850, Scottish miners pinned an open flame oil lamp shaped like a tiny teapot right to the front of a cloth cap. An open fire, inches from your face, in a mine full of explosive gas. Men used them until about 1920. Think about the courage that took. The lamp lit your work and could end your life in the same instant, and a miner wore it on his own forehead every shift for 70 years. Number 14. The carbide cap lamp. The patent came on August 28, 1900. Frederick Baldwin's acetylene gas lamp. Drip water onto carbide, and you get a clean, brilliant flame that burned about 4 hours on a fill. It was a giant leap forward. It was also still an open flame. After carbide flames were blamed for the 1932 Moeaqua mine disaster in Illinois that killed 54 men, American coal mines started phasing them out. For a generation, though, this little brass lamp was the only light in a miner's world, and the one he'd grab as a club in the dark. Number 13. The canary in the cage. This one is not a blade or a gun. It is a bird, and it is the most beloved tool in mining history. A Scottish doctor named John Scott Haldane proposed it back in 1895, and by 1911 the canary was standard equipment. A canary is roughly 20 times more sensitive to carbon monoxide than a man, so when the bird stopped singing or fell off its perch, you had minutes to run. Britain did not officially retire the last mine canaries until 1986. That little bird was a living weapon against a colorless, odorless killer the miners called afterdamp. Number 12. The straight razor. Now we come up out of the mine into the company town, where a different kind of danger waited. Every working man owned a straight razor, the cutthroat, and it stayed in his pocket long after King Camp Gillette patented the disposable safety razor in 1904. A folded razor was a shave on Sunday and snapped open in a saloon dispute on Saturday night, one of the fastest, ugliest weapons a man could carry. Cheap, legal, and everywhere, which is exactly why it was so feared. Number 11. Brass knuckles. Cast brass knuckles go back to the Civil War, when soldiers on both sides between 1861 and 1865 carried them for close-in fighting. They came home, and they came to the coal fields. They were small enough to hide in a coat pocket, turned a man's fist into a hammer, and left no doubt who won the fight. Mine guards carried them. Strikers carried them. In a company town with no neutral ground, a man kept his hands ready. Number 10. The blackjack and slungshot. A blackjack was a lead weight sewn into leather. A slungshot was a weight on a short cord you could swing. Both were silent, both were brutal, and both were so associated with crime that by the 1870s, many American states had written the slungshot into their criminal codes by name, making it one of the first personal weapons specifically outlawed in this country. A miner carried one because it fit in a pocket and asked no questions. The law called it forbidden. The miner called it Tuesday. Number 9. The Bowie knife. Made famous by Jim Bowie at the Sandbar Fight of 1827, the Big Bowie knife was the American fighting blade, a foot of steel that could skin a deer, split kindling, or settle an argument. A mountain miner who couldn't afford a pistol could nearly always lay hands on a Bowie. It did the work of a tool and the work of a weapon, and it never ran out of ammunition. In the coal camps, it was both badge and backup. Number 8. The double-barrel shotgun. The shotgun was the great equalizer of the holler. Cheap, simple, and forgiving. A side-by-side put 2 barrels of buckshot on your side without much aim, which made it the favorite of every man defending a home he didn't even own. During the strikes, both miners and mine guards leaned on the shotgun. It hung above thousands of company house doors, loaded from the 1880s on, waiting for trouble that almost always came. Number 7. The revolver, Colt's Peacemaker. Samuel Colt patented the revolver back in 1836, but it was the Colt Single-Action Army of 1873, the gun history calls the Peacemaker, that rode on the hip of nearly every man who could scrape together the money. In the coal fields, a revolver wasn't for show. The mine guards working for the operators wore them openly, so the miners wore them too. A 6-shooter on the belt was how a man with no rights told the world he still had teeth. Number 6. The Springfield and the soldiers who came home. Here's what the coal operators never figured on. When the United States entered World War I in 1917, thousands of Appalachian boys went to France, learned the Model 1903 Springfield bolt-action rifle, learned to take cover, flank, and fight as a unit, and then came home to the mines. Historians note that many of the miners who later marched on Blair Mountain were combat veterans. The companies had armed and trained the very men they were about to go to war with. That bolt-action rifle, in the hands of a man who had already survived the trenches, changed everything. Number 5. The machine gun. The weapon turned on them. Not every weapon in this story belonged to the miner, and number 5 is the one that haunted them. In February 1913, during the Paint Creek-Cabin Creek strike, coal operators ran an armored train nicknamed the Bull Moose Special past a miner's tent colony at Holly Grove and opened fire with a mounted machine gun into the dark at sleeping families. 8 years later, the 3,000 defenders waiting at Blair Mountain in 1921 set up machine guns along the ridgeline. The miner carried a rifle. The company carried machine guns. That gap is the whole story of the coal fields in one sentence. Number 4. The Winchester lever action. The rifle that answered those machine guns was, more often than not, the lever-action Winchester. The model 1984 became one of the best-selling rifles in American history. More than 7 million made, and a working-class man could feed it cheaply and fire it fast. It put venison on the table in good times and held a ridgeline in bad ones. When you picture the armed Appalachian miner, picture this rifle in his hands. It was the long gun of the common man. Number 3. The Pistols of Matewan. On May 19, 1920, in the little town of Matewan, West Virginia, 13 Baldwin Felts detectives came to throw striking families out of their company houses. The town's police chief, 27-year-old Sid Hatfield, and a crowd of armed miners confronted them at the depot. Somebody fired. In roughly 15 minutes, 10 men lay dead. 7 detectives, including both brothers of the agency's founder, 2 miners, and the town's own mayor. The Matewan massacre lit the fuse on the whole West Virginia mine war. The pistols that did it weren't fancy. They were just the guns ordinary men were finally willing to use. Number 2. The 10,000 Rifles of Blair Mountain. When Sid Hatfield was gunned down on a courthouse steps on August 1, 1921, the coal fields exploded. Between August 25th and September 2nd, 1921, somewhere between 10,000 and 15,000 armed miners marched on Logan County and fought 3,000 lawmen and company gunmen across a 15-mile ridge. They fired an estimated 1 million rounds. It took roughly 2,100 federal troops and Army aircraft to finally stop it. The Battle of Blair Mountain remains the largest armed uprising on American soil since the Civil War. Nearly 1,000 miners were arrested afterward. Those weren't soldiers, they were coal miners, and these were their rifles. Number 1. The Barlow Pocket Knife. After the rifles and the dynamite and the machine guns, here's the truth. The one weapon nearly every Appalachian coal miner truly carried every single day into the dark and back out again. It was not a gun. It was the humble Barlow pocket knife. The design goes back to Sheffield, England, around 1670. The first American Barlows came off the John Russell line in Massachusetts in 1785. Mark Twain put one in Tom Sawyer's pocket in 1876, a sure enough Barlow worth 12.5 cents. For 2.5 centuries, it was the working man's knife. Cut your cornbread, trim your fuse, whittle a peg, defend yourself if it came to that. It cost almost nothing, so every miner could own one, and nearly every one did. When that miner kissed his family goodbye and walked into a hole in the mountain not knowing if he would come back, the one thing he always had in his pocket was a little folding knife his daddy probably gave him. That's the weapon that built this country. Quiet, cheap, and always there. So now I want to hear from you. If your father, your grandfather, or his father before him came out of the coal fields, which one of these did he carry? And do you still have it today? Tell me his name and where he mined down in the comments, and let us remember these men together.